IMTR consoles, an airline pilot whose roots trace back to virtual aviation. Follow along as I try to make the simulation world as real as possible. Let's get started then. And where do we start? Like every flight, at dispatch. But don't worry, we don't go that far back today and we won't discuss any system details either. The focus of this series is to cover SOP from a multi-crew perspective, highlighting PF and PM flows and how they work together. The first task is the preliminary cockpit preparation and is done by PM. All items shall be done on the first flight of the day, while for transit flights only the star items are required. This task is basically to confirm or set aircraft on a safe state before the flight crew start the flight preparation. Engine master off for both engines. Engine mode selector check normal. Weather radar and predictive wind shear system off. Landing gear lever down. Both wipers off. Batteries check and auto. Check 25.5 volts or more with batteries offline and push for auto. External power as required. If available, always use. Just a side note. Today I'm using X-Plane 11 and the aircraft is an A320 from Flight Factor. But you can use any combination of simulator and add-on you want. This procedure fits to any A320 family aircraft. So, resuming our check, we have APU fire check and test. The APU and engines fire tests are very similar. They require checking on the fire panel the APU or engine fire light, as well as squib and discharge indications for each agent, master warning light on the glare shield, upper ECAM with a relevant message, either APU or engine fire, lower ECAM with the relevant system page, while you hear the continuous repetitive chime. For the engine fire test, you also need to check the fire indication on engine master panel. APU start. So just push the APU master switch to on and after 3 seconds you can press start. The APU will start automatically. External power as required. Since the APU is still starting and external power is available, just keep using it. Air conditioning panel set. Default amber lights on packs are normal since there is no air bleed in the system yet. Adjust the temperature as you want, 12 o'clock is just fine. Check cross bleed is auto and you can use APU bleed once it's available. Once bleed goes into the system, the fault lights under the packs will extinguish. Cockpit light as required, set the interior lights as you need or prefer, nothing special here. ECAM recall push button press. Press a recall for 3 seconds to ensure you recall any cancelled or emergency cancel messages. Emergency cancel is used to cancel and suppress a message from appearing again. ECAM oxygen pressure, hydraulic and oil quantities. Check. Here we check suitable levels of fluids for our flight. Oxygen is displayed on door page and basically the flight crew need to check if there is no half amber box around the pressure indication. If there is half amber box around the pressure indication, then the flight crew need to check if the oxygen is enough for the flight. The minimum depends on the number of crew members traveling in the flight deck and average ground temperature. and usually ranges roughly between 500 to 1000 psi. Almost 2000 is a lot, no worries about that. Then we have hydraulic quantity on hydraulic page. Check normal range. Normal range is above the amber and not beyond the green range. That's it, just check that, as simple as that. So then we move to engine for engine oil quantity, and we check if we have enough for the flight. We have 19 on both, but the minimum for CFM engines, the minimum is 9.5 plus half per estimated hour of flight. That's it. Flap check position. Check that the position on upper cam agrees with the flap lever. In case of discrepancy, get ground crew clearance to pressurize your hydraulic in order to adjust the flaps to the desired position before moving to the walk-around. Speed brake lever check, retracted and disarm. Check that the lever is at the most forward position, which is retracted, and no white color around it means it's disarmed. Parking brake on, set or confirm on. This is important for accurate brake check during the walk-around. Accumulator brake pressure check. So in here we check the triple indicator. The upper needle on the triple indicator shows the accumulator pressure, and the other two indicators shows the actual pressure being applied on both left and right main landing gear on the wheels. And this is pressure from the alternate braking system. If the accumulator pressure is not on the green bands, here you can also ask ground crew clearance to pressurize the yellow electrical pump to pressurize the accumulator. So after that, PM challenges PF with OEBs, and both pilots check together the OEBs, if any, for that aircraft and compute their preliminary performance. This data must be agreed by both pilots so PF can use it while setting up performance on the MCDU later on. So after that, PM then stands up from his seat, and just before proceeding for the walk-around check, PM checks the cockpit emergency equipment, rain repellent, circuit breakers panels and cockpit door locking system. In practice, while PM is doing these checks before the walk-around, PF can start his cockpit preparation flow. PF scan starts on the lower left corner of overhead panel and flows bottom to top, left to right. As the flow goes, the PF will set or check the systems while extinguishing all white lights, followed by central panel, pedestral, MCDU and FCU. Then, once the PM returns from the walk-around, he checks the MCDU, and only then both pilots will at the same time check their respective AFIS panels, lateral consoles and instrument panel. Oxygen crew supply on, recorder on and CVR test, if model in your add-on. GPWS no white lights. The fault lights here are related to ADIRS alignment, therefore those lights will extinguish once the ADIRS are aligned. Evacuation switch captain. Flight controls no white lights. ADIRS again white lights, and the rotary knobs 1, 2 and 3 all to nav. Lights and signs as required. Usually at this stage the seatbelt sign is off, and we switch it on once the refueling is completed. Emergency exit lights armed. Anti-ice not applicable at this stage. Probe window heat auto. This is usually used in case of ice or frost accumulated on the windshield. That's it. Landing elevation auto. Air conditioning panel as required, so you can use the bleed or not and set the temperature as you want. On electrical panel, The generator's fault lights are normal since the engines are not running. And here the PF also needs to check the batteries. So for that we need a ECAM electrical page. And this check is done by inducing the batteries on a charging cycle and checking that after 10 seconds the charging current is lower than 60 amps. External power as required, so you can use it or not as you please. Fuel panel, no white light, so basically all fuel pumps on, even the central tanks without fuel, so all pumps on. Fire panel, engines fire test as we discussed earlier. Coming down again, cargo heat panel, adjust temperature, no white lights. Flight controls the same, no white lights. For ACP and RMP3, usually this radio is used for data communications. Regarding the audio panel, you can set the cabin to on, so the CVR can record cabin announcements as well. Moving on the central panel, ISOs we check and set, adjust brightness and set the QNH if you already have it. Clock, check time and date. Anti-skid and nose wheel steering, check or set on. Moving on to pedestal. Similarly to overhead, the scan flows left to right, but in this case top to bottom. And FMGS is the last. So RMP and ACP we set as required, lights the same as required. Weather radar you can set it as required. For the latest versions, the gain usually it's calibrated, multi-scan auto, ground clutter suppress auto as well, and the tilt is only functional when multi-scan is manual. Cockpit door normal, switching panel normal, thrust levers check idle, landing gear gravity extension stowed. RMP and ACP2 you can set if you want to set something here or just leave it for the CM2 once it returns. ATC TCAS check or set standby. System 1 or 2 choose from the side of who's going to be flying, 1 in this case. Altitude reporting on, Squawk 2000 for now, and TCAS above and standby. And now we move to the FMS, which is for the next video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and let me know if you would like to see some more in-depth stuff. Hope you learned something new today. See you next time. You have controls.